explain your judicial philosophy in plain English?
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for hosting the candidate forum, by the way. And Lauren, I appreciate your tech savvy so we could do this tonight. So my judicial philosophy in plain English. I believe the courts are given the responsibility to provide excellent service to the community to resolve their disputes. And my philosophy is to do that in a manner that applies the law fairly, giving everybody the time and attention that they deserve, ensuring that I'm prepared every time I have a hearing, that the litigants and attorneys are also prepared as well so that we're not wasting anybody's time, and to do the very best that I can in serving the community. I think that there are certainly some areas of the law where there is discretion given to the courts, but there's always a framework of what laws we need to follow. And I do believe that that is our job as a judge to do that. I also think that judges have a responsibility to the community to ensure that the courts are accessible to all people and everybody is treated fairly, regardless of where they're coming from, what their background is, whether or not they need accommodations, maybe because they need a foreign language interpreter or have any disabilities. All of those things are part of the court's responsibility in completing its tasks and its role.
Okay, thank you, Lorie. And I noticed that Nadine Hatten has joined the call. Nadine, what we're doing is each candidate, we're going to give you about 2 minutes to answer. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first question is, can you explain your judicial philosophy in plain English? The second question is, what are the biggest changes you think we need in the Oakland County Circuit Court? And the third question is, how will you balance being an independent judge and an elected official? So we're going to ask those 3 questions first, and we're just going to go in order. So Lorie, Savin has just answered. Clarence Das, could you please answer the same question? Can you explain your judicial philosophy in plain English?
Absolutely. I was going to make a joke that over the past few weeks, we've all been struggling to even speak plain English. So this is going to be my attempt at doing so. I believe that the law needs to be upheld, but judges can do so in a way that comports with the spirit of the law. And one of the big aspects that I bring to my perspective on judicial philosophy is empathy. I think you can uphold the law as a judge while still having an empathetic view of what people are going through every single day. That empathetic view comes from your life experience, it comes from your professional experience, and in my case, I feel like there's a lot of ways when I used to be a prosecutor that people could really benefit from the law rather than use the law as a sword against them. I think most people are scared to come to court originally. They are scared to go in front of a judge. They're scared to talk to a prosecutor. And when I was a prosecutor, I'd meet what we call in pro per defendants all the time. These are people who either couldn't afford an attorney themselves or decided that they want to take the law in their own hands, which they have the right to do. And I would go out of my way every single time I was a prosecutor to make sure that I read them their constitutional rights, that I treated them like a human, that I made sure that the dignity as a human being was respected, and that I could still follow the law and do justice while being empathetic to the circumstances that they're going through. And I can go through all of that a little bit more when you talk about my goals for the court and how I would make that practical. But I believe my judicial philosophy is to follow the law, but again, to do so in a way that comports with the spirit of the law.
Thank you, Mr. Das. And Ms. Maura Battersby-Murphy, could you please tell us your judicial philosophy in plain English?
Yeah, yes, you know, I think that really gets to the heart of it is how the question has been phrased. Can we explain it in plain English? Because access to the courts is not just about physical access. It's about being able to navigate the court. And I think that too often, if we get too technical, then we are leaving certain people behind. I can tell you that as a litigator, my favorite type of judge and one that I aspire to be is a judge that recognizes that there is a need to move dockets along, but also appreciates individual cases and evaluates those cases on the merits, and judges that make decisions based on what is best for that case and the litigants involved to make sure that we get to the heart of the matter and that we get the correct answer in the end. And there are some judges who unfortunately don't necessarily always do that. So I think it's really important as judges to hear all of the facts, to use the discretion that is authorized by the particular law that is being applied, and to evaluate every case and every litigant on its merits.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Battersby Murphy. And then Nadine Hatten, could you please tell us your judicial philosophy in plain English? Is Nadine Hatten on the call, on the meeting? Nadine Hatten, are you there?
She's there. She's muted. I don't know if she can hear you or not, but she's.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There we go. Go right ahead.
Technical difficulties. Okay, can you repeat the first question for me, please?
The question is, can you explain your judicial philosophy in plain English?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, my judicial philosophy is that the court is accessible to everyone. And when I say accessible to everyone, that means that even as a magistrate now, that we see a person and not a case number, not a file number, and not a charge. And that means taking into consideration all factors, the family factor, not looking at the person as just that by that one incident. So you also want to consider what may have brought the person to before the court. So you want to look at all the factors. You want to look at family. You want to look at background. You want to look at the nature of the charge, and not just say, not rubber stamp things. You want to make certain.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
When you're done with this, you should plug this in and charge it. You need to charge.
Can you mute that person, Lauren? There you go. Yeah, go back. I'm sorry, Nadine. Someone was just unmuted. Go ahead and continue.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, what happened? And, and to do all of that to gain public confidence in the court. So that's my biggest philosophy, and I've always lived by that, even as a teacher, as a union rep, representative or steward, and as a magistrate. And seeing a person and looking at, considering all that, those factors, I also talk directly to the client, not at the client. And I always ask the lawyer for permission to talk to the client, to explain to the client what happened, and ask the client if they have questions. So to treat the person in front of you as a person, as a human being. And what's the second question?
Oh, no, then we're going to go on. Yeah, so that's good. Thank you. Then we're going to rotate for the second question.
Okay, thank you.
If everybody could please take a second and mute yourself, just so we don't get any interruptions. Zoom's pretty merciless when it comes to making any kind of noise. You have to really stay muted, otherwise you get jumped in. So the second question is, and we're going to have Clarence Dass go first this time. The second question is, what are the biggest changes you think we need in the Oakland County Circuit Court? Clarence Dass, please go first.
Thank you so much. I want to mention, I think that Chief Judge Kumar is on the line. I saw Judge Cunningham, I believe. Judge Gant is, of course, on the line. So nice to talk to all of you, in addition to everyone else tonight, especially about this question, which is how we can improve our court. I think there's a lot of ways judges can improve the courts, and particularly in Oakland County. And that really comes to a judge's own discretion and what a judge feels like he or she can and should do. In my personal capacity as a judge, I think one of the ways I would improve the court is to streamline as many cases as possible so that they don't necessarily have to be litigated, where resources and time and money and energy is spent by, we sometimes forget, our ordinary human beings who are coming to court. So I like mediation. I like alternative dispute resolution. I like ways that we can have people solve problems without having to use the court system to do so. Another way to do that is to give people a chance to be rehabilitated. So in criminal law, for example, there are treatment courts that Oakland County has adopted over the past few years, and I think we can adopt even more. And again, judges are the ones that have the discretion on whether you adopt a particular treatment court, utilize it, and perhaps sentence one to them. But if we can keep people out of jail, we should. Obviously, there are people who need to go to jail for the protection of the community, but not everyone has to go to jail. If someone has an addiction, for example, to alcohol or drugs, we can put them into a program like the Adult Treatment Court, which exists at the Oakland County Circuit Court. There are veteran courts. Not every probation for somebody fits the same model. So if you're a veteran and you look at life differently because of your experience, we can utilize that perspective and try to rehabilitate you. So the second thing I would do is try to utilize treatment courts and as much opportunities as possible to rehabilitate. And then the third is, as a judge, you're a manager of a docket. And as a prosecutor, I used to manage a docket all the time. I would have sometimes 50 to 75 cases every single day. You need to know how to move through those files by first doing justice first and foremost, but also making it economical for the court and for everybody else. You generally have a morning or an afternoon to do this. So if you're dealing as a judge on a motion call, for example, when everyone's filing motions and done, you have maybe 50 to 70 cases that day. You need to be prepared in advance, make decisions quickly and economically, and look at the long-term impact of what you're doing so that that's the last time, hopefully, people come to court.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dass. Maura Battersby Murphy, could you please tell us what are the biggest changes you think we need in the Oakland County Circuit Court?
Yes, that sounds great. And as Clarence said, no pressure with the Chief Justice on the line. It's interesting with COVID-19, it's brought about some changes naturally that I was really hoping to see made in the Oakland County Circuit Court even before all of this started. And I think what this virus has done is it has really allowed able-bodied people to see what it might be like for people who are immunocompromised or who have mobility issues or difficulty getting to the courthouse. And I think that what we can do to make things more economic for litigants and for attorneys, so to allow perhaps attorneys to take on cases they otherwise maybe wouldn't, is to continue to do the kind of things that we're doing now as a result of this virus, and that is more virtual appearances. If you look at the size of Oakland County, it's really unbelievable, and the court is located really on the east side of that. So for someone from South Lyon or Milford to come to our courthouse, that's a half a day to come to the courthouse for a hearing. You have someone who's litigating a custody issue or a divorce. You have someone who is a defendant in a civil matter. If they have a morning hearing in the court, Oakland, I think, does a better job than any other courthouse in the state with getting people in and out. But even if they're only at the courthouse for an hour and a half, they still are 3-4 hours into their day. And I think that we've seen that many of the issues that come before the court can be accomplished over the phone. I do know that many of the courthouses many of the courtrooms are also equipped for video conferencing. And so I would like to effectuate some of that and see what we can do for twofold, because it assists all of the citizens of the county in making it easier for them to have access, whether they're limited because they don't have the time to take off work, or they don't have childcare, or they are physically limited in some way. It would assist them. You have, unfortunately, sometimes a barrier to representation in civil matters because there's no constitutional mandate or right to representation in those matters. And attorneys can't afford necessarily to take on those cases. So I think that helping streamline that for attorneys would perhaps allow them to take on more cases that maybe were a little bit more borderline for them and make it more affordable. So I think that would help with literal access to the courthouse as well as access to justice through representation. And I think, part of that, we do have procedures in place for that. I would like to increase awareness of those procedures. The current, you can apply for certain ADA accommodations, and I'm glad that we do that. But before litigating here in Oakland County, I didn't know that. So I think some improvements to what can be done, and perhaps maybe just some more awareness of what the court's already doing.
Okay, thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. Nadine Hatten, could you please tell us what are the biggest changes you think we need in the Oakland County Circuit Court? And you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes, as I stated in the other question, I'm going to carry into this question, is that it's important that we build public confidence in the court, in the judicial system. And Oakland County Circuit Court does a great job in doing that as far as welcoming residents and constituents and people into the court. But what I would like to see, or what I would like to spearhead as a judge would be to have the community more involved as far as schools. There are some programs where elementary, middle, and high schools are able to not participate, but attend the court and observe court proceedings. But I would like to see the court get more involved in schools where the first time that individuals are engaging with a judge or the courtroom is not when they are experiencing trouble through a family member or for themselves, and that with being familiar with the court, they would be able to have more confidence in the court system and the judicial system and how it's ran. Also with the COVID-19, I would also like to see more technology used. And again, the Sixth Circuit currently is doing an awesome job with implementing Zoom, and I would like to see more of that involved for defendants and people who are visiting the court. And the reason being, as a defense attorney, oftentimes my clients experience issues like transportation issues, and perhaps the Zoom would assist with that. Additionally, and I think this is coming down the pipeline, that there's going to be a change in defendants and litigants being able to bring their phones into court. That is something that is critical because we in Oakland County don't have a very extensive public transit, and sometimes that is the only means that the defendant has to connect with their family, to one, say, I need transportation to be picked up, or two, to say, this is what happened in court today. Can you make these necessary arrangements? So oftentimes as a defense attorney, we are calling or trying to call the family afterwards, if there's no family in court, to explain to the family what happened or what's going on. And I want to circle back with the technology. I know with Zoom, scales requiring that the proceedings are available on YouTube. That is beneficial for the family too. There's family out of state who can't be involved, or there's family at home who can't get there because of childcare. And that would allow them to participate and view the proceedings and understand or know what's going on with their loved ones.
Okay, I'll let you, I know you had some other points to make. We'll save them for the later questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine Hatten. And then Lorie Savin, could you please tell us what are the biggest changes you think we need in the Oakland County Circuit Court?
Sure, Tom. So first I want to say that, I've been a member of the family courts, family division as a referee for more than 17 years, and I've seen a lot of changes, and I think that we've made an awful lot of progress to try to be more accommodating to people. I think the suggestions I have really are just taking that a little bit further. For example, the court instituted the Judge Online program many years ago now. I know that when individuals file motions that will be heard at the front of the court, every single individual gets an information sheet about Judge Online and how to participate in that program, so they can participate remotely as long as the referee or Judge Online is available to the judges in the courthouse too. The judge approves that, and in many cases that is a new way to access the courts just on the telephone. It takes a little bit of advanced planning, so people get their documents that they want to admit into evidence to you ahead of time. I think through the COVID pandemic, we've learned that there's also Zoom that's available by video. I really appreciate so many people within the court system in our county and other counties trying to maintain business and getting matters heard. I think having done hearings that way myself, some hearings you can do that way, some hearings you just can't replace that in live testimony. So having those options available and leaving it to the discretion of the judge, I think is really important. I think more judges are open to trying new technology, that maybe they were hesitant to doing it before they were thrown into the situation now. So I think that's something that we could improve, and I think we're getting there whether we'd like that or not. But again, I think that should be up to the discretion. Certainly I have some litigants that don't behave very well in my hearing room, and their behavior on the telephone or in a Zoom hearing is even worse. And I've already seen that happen. And it's a little better to have them present in your hearing room where it's definitely more formal and those expectations are clearer. My second example is we have a wonderful program at the court. That's a partnership with communities and school districts. It's called Youth Assistance. What I would like to see, and certainly I would be involved myself, is to get more support as a leader in the community for the local youth assistance programs in each of the school districts. I think that is unique to Oakland County. It's a fabulous program. We have wonderful employees there. They need more help in getting more volunteers and getting more financial support to really do the programming that our children and our youth need to avoid the juvenile justice system. So we have that program in place. I think they need more resources. The next one.
Well, let's save that. You can make in a future question. You can make that point. So we're gonna go on to our third question now. Then after we ask this third question, I just I realized that on the meeting we have some sitting judges in the meeting, so we'd like you to take a second to introduce yourself after our candidates have answered this third question. So the third question, we'll start with Maura Battersby Murphy, is how will you balance being an independent judge and an elected official? Maura Battersby Murphy, please go ahead.
Well, I think to put it sort of bluntly is to remember that it's not about me. If I have the honor of serving the voters in Oakland County as their next Oakland Circuit County Circuit Court judge, it will be my duty to apply the law and to remember that my own personal views are not to be confused with the rulings of the court. You know, the court, when we talk about the court, we talk about the court ruled this, the court did that. It's bigger than just the judge sitting on that particular bench. And so by remembering that my own personal views should not impact any other person's access to justice is what I intend to keep in mind and to continue to serve the people of Oakland County. That's the most important thing, regardless of my own personal views.
Okay, thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. Nadine Hatten, could you please tell us how will you balance being an independent judge and an elected official? Oh, you'll need to unmute yourself, Ms. Hatten.
Thank you. As an independent judge, I have a fierce commitment to high standards of practice and attention to detail. So what I would do is it's important to understand that the law is forever fluid and changing with times, and it's necessary to not let one supersede the other, but to follow the law as it is written and not to insert as my opponent, Ms. Battersby, indicated, not to insert my personal opinions, but to also understand that the law is fluid and changing and growing, and to be aware of that and to apply the law accordingly, and to continuously be educated about the law and the legislation and the politics.
Thank you, Nadine Hatten. Lorie Savin, could you tell us how will you balance being an independent judge and an elected official?
Sure, thank you. So I've served on the State Bar's Judicial Ethics Committee for over 10 years now, and I've been on its professionalism and civility work group along with Judge Kumar now since it got started about a year and a half ago. And these are really important questions that we have been trying to answer, especially with things like social media and people's personal lives being so much more accessible to the public than they ever have before. The way judges conduct themselves, both on and off the bench, is extremely important to ensure that our citizens and the people that come before the court and rely on the court to be impartial and fair can rely on our court system. We need to maintain very high ethical standards and ensure that everybody is treating each other professionally and civilly so that people have faith in our judicial system. I've heard some really interesting scenarios when we're working on opinions to be issued by the State Bar about ethics questions from judges and other quasi-judicial officers, because referees and magistrates are also subject to the same canons and rules. And they're things you wouldn't have thought of before. So I think that's a great resource for judges if they ever have a question about what is and is not appropriate future conduct. We've got a great head of the Judicial Tenure Commission, Lynn Helen, is very accessible to people as well. And I think those resources are out there as long as judges that have any questions utilize those resources. I think that's probably the most important thing we can do to maintain both that independence as judicial officers, but still be community leaders and elected officials.
Thank you, Lorie. Savin. And so now I'm going to give instructions on how to ask a question. And then after I give the instructions, I'm going to ask our incumbent judges to take a second and introduce themselves. We're delighted to have you. And then we're going to take questions. Now, if you hover over the menu, you'll notice there's a participants window. And if you click that, that'll open up a window on your right, and you'll see a little blue raise hand icon. So if you could click that raise hand icon if you want to ask a question for one of our judicial candidates. And I know a couple of people have already sent questions in the chat to Lauren. And Lauren, are you going to ask those, or are you going to call on the people who chatted you?
I was going to ask both of them. One of them is a little bit lengthy, and the other doesn't have access to audio, so he asked me to answer it.
Okay, so Lauren will go first, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So if you want to, in the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, click that blue raise hand icon, and then Lauren will recognize you, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Real quick, just before we had the other judges introduce themselves, Clarence, did you answer that last question?
I didn't, and I wasn't going to interrupt Tom. He's got.
Oh, pardon me.
I just want to make sure.
I wrote your name down before. Now I apologize for that, Clarence. Yeah, but yeah, if you could please, Clarence asks, if you could please tell us, how will you balance being an independent judge and an elected official?
I appreciate that, and thank you, Lauren. I think this is a very important question, and to be honest, this is a very personal question for me because I have two parents that fled the Middle East, and they were subject to a regime that was completely unindependent. They left Iraq, and I was thankfully born here, but they were dealing with a legal system where it was pay to play, where if you didn't believe with the government, if you didn't have the right resources, then the judge that you appeared in front of was going to decide your fate accordingly. Here, I think it's incredibly important even though we run and speak to various groups, I think it's extremely important that we maintain our independence. I've had to do that when I was a prosecutor from 8:30 to 5, and then I would go to the Oakland County Bar Association and see the defense attorneys. I've had to do that when we go to events like weddings, and we sometimes see opposing counsel there, or what's even more awkward, perhaps the criminal defendant that you were prosecuting that morning at. It's been a tightrope that all of us have had to walk our entire careers, but it's one that's extremely important. So I know how to do it. I'm going to do it. And it's probably the highest priority I have, because the last thing we need is a judge who doesn't give everyone a fair shake. And if you feel like that when you're going into a courtroom, then we're all doing a disservice to the courts.
Thank you, Clarence Dass, and I apologize for skipping you. I wrote your name down like you'd already been on there, and then I called your name. Sorry about that. Okay, could our sitting judges, could you please take a second and introduce yourself? We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shalina Kumar. I'm the Chief Judge of the Oakland County Circuit Court.
Good evening, everybody. This is Judge Jake Cunningham. I want to say, first of all, thank you for this club's support and help and endorsement for my campaign in 2018. I really appreciate that, and I will never forget your support, and I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kamisha Gant, and I'm your newest Oakland County Circuit Court Judge. I was appointed on April 30th of 2019 by Governor Whitmer, and I just celebrated my first year anniversary, so it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And I also wanted to remind you that I'm on the ballot as well this year, so I'm running to retain my seat. Thank you.
Do we have any more other sitting judges on the call? Well, thanks for joining us, and we're just delighted to have you. It's really great to hear from you. Okay, when you ask a question, you can either ask a question for one candidate or you can ask it for all candidates. That's your choice when you ask the question. Candidates, if you could please keep it to about 2 minutes when you answer. I'm not going to be really strict on enforcing time rules. I just find that annoying. But if you could please keep it to about 2 minutes when you answer. And Lauren, why don't you go ahead and ask our the 2 questions you collected?
Sure. So the first question from the audience was from Brad, and he says he would like to know what do each of you feel like is your unique qualification to be seated on this circuit court?
So the first one to answer that would be Nadine Hatten.
My unique qualification is my diverse background. I was a high school teacher and I taught in the inner city with high-risk youth. And while I was going to school, while I was teaching, I went to law school at night and was the union steward. So that goes to my unique quality is that I'm hardworking, I'm determined, and I bring a unique skill set. Having been having a career outside of law and having been a union steward and now a magistrate and a defense attorney, and I have an LLM, which is a master's in law, which I went further to study my trade and skill to defend my clients. So all of that makes me a unique, my complete background.
Thank you, Nadine Hatten. And second, Lauren, if you could repeat the question for me for Lorie Savin.
Sure, Lorie, what do you feel like your unique qualification is for this open position?
So thank you for the question, Rod. So the reason why I am uniquely qualified for the position is that I have been a hearing officer conducting more than 1,500 enforcement hearings a year and hundreds of modification hearings related to child support, parenting time, custody, changing children to the domicile of another state, all sorts of hearings involved in family court. I have experience and training as a mediator, and I have worked with populations of all backgrounds, socioeconomic classes for the 25 years or so I've been practicing law. So my experience in really working with members of the public from any background on very high conflict, difficult emotional issues, and being able to think on my feet quickly, finding creative solutions to help parties come to a mutually agreeable resolution, and being able to maintain the appropriate demeanor no matter what you are faced with. Staying calm, staying responsive, being polite, being respectful, giving everybody an opportunity to speak. Parties that are unrepresented sometimes feel nervous when they're in court and the other side has an attorney, and it's my job to make sure that everybody feels like they're being heard and that they understand what's going on. So part of a job of the judge is to ensure that the court process is explained to the parties and they do have the confidence that they are being given a fair opportunity. I've been doing that for more than 17 years, and so I'm well practiced in that. I think that gives me unique qualifications for the job.
Thank you, Lorie Savin. And Lauren, could you repeat the question for Clarence Dass?
Yeah, of course. Clarence, what do you feel like your unique qualifications are for this open position?
Thank you. Well, I believe that the word that I used at the beginning of this session, empathy, is my most unique quality for this position. And I mentioned that life experience and professional experience are what give you empathy, help you understand what other people are going through. And in my case, I was a prosecutor for 5 years where I was in the Special Victims Unit. I was prosecuting some of the most horrific crimes that Oakland County ever saw, whether it was sexual assault or domestic violence, child abuse, or even murder. I saw what it was like to be a victim. I saw what it was like to be a police officer. I saw what it was like to be a probation officer. And then I became a defense attorney, and I saw what it was like to be a defendant, the person walking in those shoes, the person that needs the ride to court, the person that's life is on the line and can't afford the bail that's been imposed upon them. And then I became the manager of my own law firm, and I knew what it was like to be the lawyer, the litigator that has to juggle 2 to 3 court courtrooms per morning or 2 to 3 court cases per day. And to understand what every single person in the courtroom is going through is empathy. It's an important quality for a judge. It's a quality that I think I uniquely possess because I've been in all of those different positions, and it's what I think I will bring to the court most.
Thank you, Clarence Dass. And then finally, Lauren, could you repeat the question for Maura Battersby Murphy?
Sure. Maura, what do you feel like your unique qualifications are for this open judge position?
Oh, wow. A big question. I truly believe that it is the depth and the breadth of my experience as a litigator. I think maybe the general public doesn't necessarily realize that there are transactional attorneys and there are trial lawyers. And so I have had the benefit of litigating across jurisdictions. I started my career in Wisconsin. I practiced in Wisconsin state and in federal court. And I've done the same here. I have practiced as a criminal defense attorney. I've had experience as a prosecutor, but what I bring in addition to all of that is a significant amount of work as a civil litigator. I have represented clients from highly sophisticated insurance companies all the way down to indigent defendants and to children. And so I truly will be able to, on day one, handle any single case that comes before me, regardless of whether I'm asked to preside over civil, criminal, or family law. The other thing that I think I bring to this, which is unique, is I come from a very large family. I have 40 first cousins, and you can do the math on that. It's actually kind of incredible. But I have really, if I haven't experienced it, someone close to me has. And so, I am my parents are first generation Americans. They are small business owners. The experience that I have with day-to-day life is something that I think is unique and that I can bring to the bench so that I can assure you that when you are before me, I understand who you are and your concerns and why those sort of concerns are meaningful to you, whether you're a small business owner, whether it's a family court issue, or whatever it is.
Thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. Then Lauren, your next question, the first person to answer would be Lorie Savin.
Okay, this is a little bit of a lengthy one, but it's super thorough. This one comes from Nomi. She says, in this country where we spend our money can have a big impact. Mr. Das, you've donated to the following campaigns: Republicans Schuette, Kesto, Tents, Runestad, Kazmatka, judicial candidates Damon, Nance, Viviano, Valentine, and the OCDP. Ms. Savin, you've donated to Democrats, Gregg, Pulver, Peltonen, Student, Moss, Ellison, Whitmer, Lamacchia, and also the Grieg Women in Leadership. Ms. Murphy, you've donated to Act Blue. Ms. Hatten, you've donated to judicial candidates Blount, Sheila Johnson, and Teresa Johnson. Please explain how you make your decisions regarding political donations. Are there other charitable, nonprofit, or issues-based organizations where you donate your money? So like I said, there was a setup, but the real question is, how do you make those decisions?
Okay, and then when you repeat the question, just repeat that
I won't do
last part.
that.
Start more, please. Yeah,
I want it to
good.
be fair.
So Lorie Savin. Lorie Savin, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was taking notes so I don't miss any parts to Nomi's multi-part question. I will answer as best as I can within my 2 minutes. So I have made political contributions to candidates, both partisan and nonpartisan, who have values similar to mine, who advocate for the things that I think are important. I think one of the things you'll find with the candidates that I've donated to, and my husband's also donated to other candidates as well, we kind of work as a team that way. You'll find that education is very important in ensuring that our state is properly funding our public schools, and ensuring our tax dollars are going to public schools rather than private schools. Other candidates that believe in access and equality for everyone. One of the people that's not on there, but I know I donated to Dana Nestle's campaign because she is clearly a very big advocate for all people, including the LGBTQ community, which is also something very important to me and has been for a long time. When it comes to other charitable contributions, I've been collecting charity and giving money to organizations that are important to me since I was in grade school. That's something I learned in my religious training and education, that's always important to give to others. Whatever you have, you set aside part of that to give to others. And generally, our donations are to organizations that are like social service agencies that assist people with food assistance, with housing assistance, with job training. Jewish Vocational Services is an example with that. We've donated to many food banks. I donate my time. I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. I volunteer for my temple, Israel, the temple that we belong to, and other communal organizations. We spend a lot of time volunteering at my children's schools. I was very active and involved and chaired the diversity committee there for at least 6-7 years and was treasurer for our PTO. So I do charitable activities, not just with my resources financially, but also with my time. And I pick things that I think really will have the biggest impact to people, the people that need it the most, our public education and our social service agencies.
Okay, thank you, Lorie Savin. And then Lauren, could you repeat the question for Clarence to ask?
Yeah, of course. Like we said,
just the last part, start
an
with
edited
please.
version. Let me find the end of it. Please explain how you make your decisions regarding political donations. Are there other charitable, nonprofit, or issue-based organizations where you donate your money?
Thank you very much. So, this is the first time I've ever run for public office before. I've never really been involved in organized politics. The only time that I've actually had to get involved in organized politics is when a friend of mine was running for office. So, a lot of people that I've donated to in the past have been my friend. I want to support them, and that's included Democrats, that's included Republicans. I actually think I contributed to an independent at some point in my life, and I continue to contribute. The other part of it is a lot of, being a lawyer and representing social justice causes that I've done in the past few years, one of the biggest ones being the attempted deportation of 114 Chaldeans from Detroit, required me to take on kind of a unique role and to set up a shop with essentially a bunch of organizations where I would have to attend certain events and to try to talk to legislators and congresspeople and elected officials who are going to make an impact on my clients' lives. That's one of the double-edged swords of being a practicing lawyer. You have to not only lobby for your client inside the courtroom, but also outside the courtroom. And many of those decisions came because I was doing it for my clients, and I'm proud of those, and I will continue to represent my clients as long as I can, hopefully only until November. The other part of it is that I spend more of my money on charitable causes. So I serve on the advisory board for Gilda's Club of Metro Detroit. Many of you know I'm a cancer survivor, a very proud cancer survivor. And so I donate monthly, not only in my time, but in my resources to current cancer patients, current cancer survivors. Just recently, I was on the host committee for something called Gilda's Big Night Out, which because of coronavirus became Gilda's Big Night In. And I ended up hosting a forum, pro bono forum for cancer patients on how to pay their bills. So if I've ever donated, it's because it's my friend, it's been a cause that I needed to access or help, or it's a cause that's near and dear to me, like the cancer community, for example.
Thank you, Clarence Dass. And Lauren, could you repeat the question for Maura Battersby Murphy, please?
Yeah, as soon as I find it. I just don't want to do it. I want to do it justice. Please explain how you make your decisions regarding political donations. Are there any other charitable, nonprofit, or issues-based organizations where you donate your money?
So I have not made too many political contributions. So I don't have a lot to speak about as far as that's concerned. My husband and I do have numerous charities that are near and dear to our heart. Many of those have been motivated by our own personal experiences or the experience of our loved ones. Many of you probably don't know, but my 3 sons, my most recent one was born just a little bit early, but his older brother was born at 34 weeks. And it was a very, very scary time for John and I. We were in the NICU for a very long time trying to make sure he was healthy enough to come home. So we have given a significant amount to the Operation Give Foundation. which funds neonatal research and support, because we feel so fortunate that our Emmett, aside from being an absolute wild man, is perfectly healthy and had access to great medical care. And so we want to make sure that other children have the same. We've donated to the C.S. Mott Hospital in Ann Arbor, not only because I'm partial to Ann Arbor because I'm a Michigan grad, but also because I have a niece who, without providing HIPAA information, has had significant health challenges, and truly the research and the work that the doctors there have done have been instrumental into her leading a very normal life. I believe Lorie mentioned this, but my very first charitable contribution was to the St. Pat's Senior Center in Detroit. That provides all manner of activity to seniors and vulnerable people in Detroit. And I started giving a portion of my birthday money as like a 6-year-old girl every year. And it was really cool to be able to go down there with my family. My great uncle actually started the organization. And so that was my first entree into charitable giving. So without going way over my 2 minutes, the other charity that my husband and I both believe in is the Child Safe organization through the Judson Center. And that helps to provide resources to foster children. Again, it's really out of gratitude for the fact that, we have beautiful children who need for nothing, in an attempt to really help those who do need for things to get what they need. So the neonatal research, CS Mott, and as well as the Judson Center.
Thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. And now, Lauren, could you please repeat the question for Nadine Hatten?
Sure, Nadine. Please explain how you make your decisions regarding political donations. Are there other charitable, nonprofit, or issues-based organizations where you donate money?
Okay, thank you. The organizations and political parties that I choose to donate money are candidate parties and organizations who promote growth in individuals at a time where they need, at a time they're in need and are responsive to their needs and offer help. I support groups that are promote diversity and that act as a force for change. When I was a child, my mother gave to United Way out of every check, and so United Way is an agency that's near and dear to me. I also have a family member who suffers greatly from mental health issues. So those are organizations, that's another organization that is near and dear to me. I've recently become involved with the Alzheimer's group organization, and that's because I also serve as a guardian ad litem in probate court. And that is one of the issues that continues, or that I would see repeatedly, is that a lot of the wards would have Alzheimer's issues, or Alzheimer's was what led to the need for their guardianship. Breast cancer, of course, that runs in my family. And so those are some of the organizations. So it's because 1, it's personal, 2, promotes growth, 3, diversity, and acts as a force for change within the community.
Thank you, Nadine Hatten. Now, William Asher, you had a question. Why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, and when you ask your question, indicate if it's for all the candidates or just one of the candidates.
Yeah, well, I guess my question is for all the candidates. And first of all, I want to thank all the candidates for appearing before us. This has been very helpful and informative. I have 2 short questions, each of which requires a short answer. One is, I'm wondering if the candidates can tell us their current job and employer. And secondly, I'd like to know about top endorsements that they may have received.
Okay, so we're going to go to Clarence Das first. Clarence, could you tell us your current job and employer and the top endorsements you've received?
I have a horrible boss. His name is Clarence Das. Makes me work way too long and crazy hours. But that's a short way of putting that. I run my own law firm right now. After being a prosecutor, I started my own law firm. It's the Das Law Firm. I've been doing that for 5 years. I also am actually an adjunct professor at Rochester University. I teach business law to pre-law students. Our semester just ended. So that's the first part of the question. The second part are endorsements. I'm very, very proud to have the endorsement of the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, Bridget Mary McCormick. I'm endorsed by the Chief Judge of the Family Division of the Oakland County Circuit Court, Mary Ellen Brennan. I'm endorsed by the incumbent of this position, which is Jim Alexander. I'm endorsed by dozens of other judges, and I carry them with pride daily.
Thank you, Clarence Dass. Maura Battersby Murphy, could you tell us your current job and employer and the top endorsements you've received?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Asher, for your question. I am currently employed by Hackney Grover. It's a civil litigation law firm. It was what I was discussing earlier, all civil litigation. The top, I hate calling it a top endorsement, like one endorsement is more of an honor than another. I am currently endorsed by the Bernstein law firm and the Bernstein family, which is a huge honor, and I'll tell you why. Because I have been practicing as a defense attorney, defending the Bernstein lawsuits for the last 5.5 years. So opposing counsel has effectively endorsed me and said, yes, absolutely, she'd make a terrific judge. So I am particularly proud of that. I also am endorsed by many of the current circuit court judges, and I will have a list for you shortly, but those are the top endorsements.
Thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. Nadine Hatten, could you tell us your current job and employer and the top endorsements you've received?
Yes, I currently am a solo defense attorney. So I work for myself. I've had my own practice for 10 years. I'm also serving as the district court magistrate in Hazel Park. I've had that position for 1 year. That is a position that the magistrate position is a position you're appointed to by the judge of that district court. My top endorsements, I have multiple endorsements from city council members in Pontiac and various church leaders and various members on the circuit court. And that would be evidenced by the award that I received in 2017 for children advocacy. The award that I received, it has to do, it's right here. It's the Sandra Silver Advocate for Children Award. Updates will, as far as endorsements, will be coming soon.
Thank you, Nadine Hutton. And then Lorie Savin, could you tell us your current job and employer and your
Sure.
top endorsements you've received?
So my current employer is Oakland County. My check is signed by Andy Meisner. I saw him know me with the banner back there. So thank you to Andy for signing my checks. I am a referee with the Oakland County Circuit Court's Family Division and their domestic side at the front of the court. So I'm a hearing officer assigned to Judge Lisa Langton and Judge Lisa Gorsica. I work with both of them. I have received endorsements so far, so since we're at the Royal Oak Club, my top endorsement is your state representative, Jim Ellison. I don't want to get in trouble with him since this is his home club. I am going to go out there and rank them. That is my top endorsement. I also have endorsements from the building and construction trades and State Senator Rosemary Bayer, the Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner, Jim Nash, and I know I have others. Some of them are listed on the website that I have. I don't know that it's been updated recently, but that's a good place to go to because I can't remember all, and if somebody is listening that's endorsed me and I didn't say your name, I'm really, really sorry. The one thing I just want to circle back to, since I think I'm still within my 2 minutes, when you asked about charitable donations, I forgot one category, and I don't want to get in trouble for not being completely transparent. I also donate to organizations that assist people with legal assistance. So I regularly contribute to local legal aid, Lakeshore Legal Aid, and the William Booth Law Clinic out of Salvation Army in Detroit. I don't want to miss that and get in trouble for not saying that.
Thank you, Lorie Savin. Now, if anybody else has any questions, click that blue raise hand icon. If we don't get any more questions, we're just going to ask each candidate to give a closing statement. But before we do that, Lauren, you were going to introduce Kenesha Gant?
Yeah, hi everybody. So we had a couple questions from the audience about why Kenesha wasn't speaking along with everybody else too. Can I invite Kenesha to explain kind of the difference between the position that's open and her current position?
Sure. Hi, everybody, and thank you for the question. When you go to the ballot on November 3rd or vote by absentee, and flip over the ballot, there will be 3 different categories under the Sixth Circuit Court in Oakland County. There will be the incumbent judges that run as a PAC, and our Chief Judge, Judge Shalina Kumar, is on the ballot this year in the incumbent PAC, and they are unopposed. There's a second category, which is for a partial term, and that's for me. And that's because I was appointed last year to fill a vacancy, and I have to run this year to retain my seat. So all of the governor's appointees, no matter where they were appointed, pretty much have to run on the ballot, are going to show up on your ballot this year to retain their seats. So I'm in a separate category all by myself. And as far as I know, I'm unopposed as well. And then there's the third category, which is going to be for the open seat, which you have your 4 candidates that you've heard from tonight. So I wasn't included in this forum because I'm in a separate category, and I am considered an incumbent judge.
Thank you, Judge Gant, and thank you for joining us. We sure are honored by your joining our meeting.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Okay, we have a raised hand from Ian Duncanson. Ian Duncanson, why don't you go ahead and ask your question, and could you indicate if it's for all the candidates or just a specific candidate?
Hi, yes. So this question is for all 4 candidates. Do you favor abolishing cash bail and only having pre-trial detention if someone is determined to be a threat?
Okay, Maura Battersby Murphy, do you favor abolishing cash bail and only having pre-trial detention if a defendant is a threat?
Okay, that's a 2-part. Only, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you favor abolishing cash bail and only detaining defendants if they're a threat, a physical threat to someone?
Okay, so Ian, Mr. Duncanson, I hate to do this, but it's the lawyer in me, but the answer truly is it depends. I think that we have some problems with people, and of course I can't get actually political on this, but with people who are faced with a decision between pleading guilty or sitting awaiting arraignment or waiting trial in courts. I don't think that we should be having debtor's prison. So I think that every person should be evaluated based on the merits of the case, based on the merits of the individual person. So I can't quite give you a yes and no answer, but that is the truth. That as the judge is what I would have to weigh. I do think that there has been really interesting and extensive research regarding sentencing reform, and it's my understanding that enjoys bipartisan support from the legislation perhaps, and also the judiciary. So I am very excited about the research being done in it to make sure that we are doing right by all of our citizens. And that is, of course, people that are accused of crimes and also the potential victims. So there's quite a lot to balance there, so I can't give you a yes or no answer, but I do certainly appreciate the nuance of that system and in making sure that we are really caring for all of our citizens, whether they are accused of a crime or whether they're a victim of a crime.
Thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. Nadine Hatten, do you favor abolishing cash bail and only having pre-trial detention if a person is a threat or a flight risk?
Thank you for the question. As a city magistrate, that is part of my responsibilities. I conduct arraignments and set bonds, and in doing so, I consider, as the law requires me to, the likelihood that a person, 2 things, the likelihood that a person will or will not appear at the next court date, and 2, public safety. And in considering those 2 factors, I do impose personal bonds or no cash if they don't have a criminal history, they don't have a history of not appearing in court, and they're not a danger to the community. But yes, it's very important that we protect the community, and so if someone is a threat to the community, it's necessary to impose the appropriate bond or bail to keep the community safe. And that has been particularly an issue that has been raised and revisited now during COVID-19, because there's so much COVID or coronavirus in the jails and MDOC, the Michigan Department of Corrections, that is something that is being considered and that I have to balance and weigh in giving the personal bonds, because we want to keep everyone safe. We don't want to continue to contribute to the virus in the jail or the Michigan Department of Corrections. So yes, the likelihood that they will or will not appear in public safety.
Thank you, Nadine Hatten. Lorie Savin, do you favor abolishing cash bail and only having pretrial detention if the defendant's a threat or a flight risk?
This is a really great question, Ian, and I know that this is something that's been a concern, along with unreasonable fees and fines imposed on defendants and people ending up sitting in jail because they can't pay their fees and fines. We've certainly gotten a lot of movement, and there's a lot more discussion about both of these issues. We've gotten more direction from the state Supreme Court, and I think that there are even novel programs to try and help people be able to bond out. In fact, I know that I've seen on Facebook some fundraisers for an organization trying to get people bonded out that do have bonds they can't pay, who aren't a risk. I think it's interesting to note how many people have been released from jails immediately upon the beginning of the COVID pandemic, which I think tells us that there are too many people that are in jail that don't need to be. I do think, though, that it is a difficult decision for a judge, especially at the very beginning of any criminal case, to have all of the information they know to be able to satisfactorily determine if somebody is a risk to the community's safety or a flight risk. So I do think there needs to be some discretion for the judges. I do recognize that it's a difficult determination for the judge, because at the beginning of the case, you may not have all of the information that you need. I also think there are so many alternatives to having somebody post a bond that they may not be able to pay. There are opportunities like the use of a tether. For people that may have an alcohol-related offense, you can use a tether that's hooked up to an alcohol monitor so that we can ensure that the public is safe without having to put people in jail pending the outcome of their criminal case. I think the other benefit to that is that when you're using a tether or an alcohol monitor tether, an individual can also continue to be permitted certain activities like their job. When people are spending time in jail awaiting trial, they often lose their job, and that makes their life even more difficult if they need to resume their employment, their ability to pay their bills, have shelter, things like that. So exploring more of those options and opportunities is something that I would definitely consider as a judge.
Thank you, Lorie Savin. And Clarence Das, do you favor abolishing cash bail and only having pretrial detention if the defendant's a threat or a flight risk?
Well, Ian, it's a great question. You know, at every event I think I've gone to since I started running for judge, this question comes up, and it shows that it's an extremely important question to people's lives and to our justice system. It's a question that I literally deal with every single day as a criminal defense attorney. We have my practice. In fact, I just did an arraignment today by Zoom where I was arguing against a cash bond. As a judge, you have to weigh in all the things that all the candidates have talked about, which is whether the person's a flight risk and whether they're a danger to the community. But as I said at the very beginning of this session, when we can keep people out of jail, we should keep them out of jail. And I support the bipartisan task force that Governor Whitmer had initiated and led by Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist that essentially recommended a presumption against jailing individuals. If we can keep them working, if we can keep them safe and the community safe, we should do so. Every case is different, but we should err on the side of keeping people freedom, because at the end of the day, everyone is presumed not guilty until they're actually proven guilty.
Thank you, Clarence Das. Tim Chikorsky has a question. Tim, please go ahead. You'll have to, there you go.
Now, this is for all four of you. Do you believe that a court-appointed attorney should be provided funds to pay for a expert witness to defend their client?
Okay, we'll start with Nadine Hatten. Do you believe that a court-appointed attorney should be provided funds to pay for expert witnesses?
I've worked as a defense attorney for approximately 10 years in juvenile and adult criminal cases, as well as child neglect cases. And I absolutely do believe that public defenders should be awarded funds to pay for additional assistance. The judicial system, or I should say on the other side, there are multiple individuals there. You have the prosecutor, you have the probation agent, you have pretrial services, all gathering information. And sometimes that information is not shared with the defense attorney. So yes, absolutely. The defense attorney, oftentimes they are solo practitioners like myself, and we offer superb representation. And oftentimes if our clients can't afford it, but that does not preclude or mean that they don't deserve the best representation. And if that representation requires financial assistance from the court, they definitely should be awarded such assistance.
Thank you, Nadine Hatten. Lorie Savin, do you believe that court-appointed attorneys should be provided funds to pay for expert witnesses?
So my quick, short answer is, in order for the defendant to be given a fair trial, a court-appointed attorney needs to be given the resources to do their job. And if you don't provide those fees for experts when necessary, then the attorney is trying to try a case with at least one hand tied behind their back, and that's not what I call a fair trial. I think part of the problem extends even beyond expert witness fees in ensuring that court-appointed counsel is paid fairly for their services, whether it's in criminal cases or in juvenile court, where the court appoints lawyers for parents, where the court appoints a guardian ad litem. I know Oakland County has done a great job of trying to do their best with their budgeting and pay the attorneys a fair wage. But we need, on a grander scale, and it's not just Oakland County's problem, we need a better system to pay those court-appointed attorneys. I know guardian ad litems that drive hours to see their child that they represent before they go into juvenile court for a proceeding, and those attorneys get paid by appearance in court. All of the time they spend outside of court doesn't matter. So they're doing this because they want to do a good job, because they have an obligation to visit their client. And if their client is in a placement 2 hours or 3 hours away, they're going to drive all the way there to see their client. I want to make sure that the field is level and fair to everybody. And I think we need to do right by those court-appointed attorneys if we want to keep good attorneys that are volunteering to take that work.
Thank you, Lorie Savin. Clarence Das, do you believe that court-appointed attorneys should be provided funds to pay for expert witnesses?
Absolutely. And I still serve as a public defender. I take on court-appointed cases. I know that this is a real issue. But Tim, I'll tell you that there's been a development in the past year on this topic that has helped all of us as defense attorneys. And that when I was a prosecutor and a court-appointed attorney requested a defense attorney, there was no budget for it. It would be only given or granted in very unusual and heightened circumstances. But since then, as part of this nationwide sentencing reform and criminal justice reform project, there's something in Michigan called the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, the MIDC, which I'm a part of. Every defense attorney in Michigan has to be a part of. And that now does provide you as a right funds for an expert witness. So it's made the justice system better, especially in cases that I oftentimes am involved in, which is sexual assault cases, when DNA, for example, could perhaps exonerate somebody in an assault case or a rape case or a murder case. The last thing we want is for someone to be convicted that's innocent. And one of the ways to do that, to keep everyone a footing, is to provide those expert witnesses. I'm glad the state of Michigan has caught up with it, and I hope that expanded resources will be available.
Thank you, Clarence Das. And then Maura Battersby Murphy, do you believe that court-appointed attorneys should be provided funds to pay for expert witnesses?
I do. Actually, first I want to say thank you to Tim for organizing the event or for reaching out to organize this. Yes, I do. I actually practiced in Wisconsin in the State Public Defender's Office. When you worked as an appointed attorney, actually you could apply for the funds and it was awarded. And so I had a number of clients who had mental health issues and who I was concerned didn't have the mental capacity to stand trial. And so really they were facing a bunch of time in jail as a result of essentially their mental illnesses. And we were able to establish through those experts that in fact they did not have the mental capacity to stand trial and they were not to be held responsible for what they were accused of. So I have seen firsthand exactly the difference that having the appropriate defenses and the appropriate workup to a file really means. And so, you know, if you have a person who can't afford legal representation, they are indigent by definition. They certainly can't afford the appropriate expert to prove their innocence and to build up their defense. So yes, I am certainly in favor of that.
Thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. And now we're going to go ahead and ask you for your closing statements, your closing arguments, I guess, since you're attorneys. The order will go and will be Lorie, then Clarence, then Maura, then Nadine. But if you could go ahead and give us your just a closing, whatever closing statement you want to make, then I'd also ask you if you could please leave your contact information in the chat in case someone who joined the meeting has a question that they weren't able to ask, and then they'll be able to ask it of you. So we're going to go in the order of Lorie, Clarence, Maura, and Nadine to get your closing statements. Lorie, Savin, could you please go first?
Thank you very much again to the Royal Oak Democratic Club for hosting the event, to the OCDP for publicizing it, for everybody that took the time out of what I'm sure is a very busy evening to listen to all four of us candidates. So I do want to thank everybody. Thank you, Tim, for organizing this and making sure that the event happened tonight. I want to say that the reason I am running for judge is because I know what an impact the court's decisions have on the people that we serve. Whether it was the client that I represented as a guardian ad litem, a child who asked me questions about when is it that they're going to get home. They love their mom, they love their dad, but they don't understand why they can't live with them. And my job was to represent their best interest and try and explain it to them regardless of their age, their ability to understand things, what was going on in the legal system. The children that I interview when I have to make custody decisions who beg me to do what I can to help their parents get along, to keep them out of the middle of the situation. The parents who I hold accountable and get them to make positive changes with their life, whether that's look hard for a job, whether that's learn how to work together and co-parent for your children, that eventually thanked me for listening to them, to helping them address the unique challenges that they face in their family and helping them rise above those problems, move forward, improving their lives and their children's lives. You know, I've had clients, unfortunately, that when I represented people at Legal Aid who were victims of domestic violence, and I do have 2 clients that were murdered. And I know that there is only so much courts can do. There's only so much a personal protection order can do. There's only so much foresight a judge can have when issuing a sentencing in a criminal case. But I do know that judges make a huge difference. The judge that hears a criminal case and decides that a defendant will be given probation so that they can maintain their job and their housing, that understands that it's costly to do a lot of services and tries to make sure not to impose requirements through probation that are going to undermine their futures and their ability to successfully complete their probation. Those are things that individual judges do to make individual decisions for each person that really make a difference. And that's why the person on the bench makes a difference. Our laws are our laws, but the way they're applied, the fact that you have a judge that listens, that tries to put themselves in their shoes, and then follows the law in the most appropriate manner for that individual to help them resolve their problem, learn from mistakes that they might make, and have a better life for themselves, their family, and their future. Because every decision in family court, criminal court, civil court has an impact not just on that person's life, but their entire family. That's
Thank you,
something
Lorie.
I recognize and I've seen for the 25 years I've practiced, and I want to be the person to help those people in their futures and their families' futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorie Savin. And then I'll ask again if each candidate, if you could please make sure to leave your contact information in the chat, because I know some other people did have questions that they wanted to ask. We just don't have time to ask everybody. Clarence Dask, could you please give your closing statement?
Absolutely. Tim, Lauren, Tom, and everyone participating tonight, I really appreciate it. You know, seeing faces other than your own in the past couple of months is the highlight of my day. It's been a very difficult past few months. I think every single one of us has been impacted in some way because of the coronavirus, whether it's someone that we love or perhaps ourselves being impacted by it, or our jobs, our livelihood, our families, etc. In my case, I have a wife that comes home every single day that's a pediatrician at Detroit Medical Center, with one of the highest rates of coronavirus because of the African-American community there. And we're worrying every single day about her status and the status of everybody. So to have an event like this where we can take our minds off of it and talk about an important cause that I care deeply about, and we all care deeply about, otherwise we wouldn't be here, our justice system is important. I believe that empathy is an incredibly important tool for a judge. And having life experience and professional experience that makes a judge empathetic is incredibly important. I'm running for this not because I have to run for it. I have a very successful law firm. I love my law firm. I love representing clients. But I'm wanting to continue assisting individuals in our justice system and improving our justice system. I'm doing this because I have that life experience, that work experience, that personal experience to understand what every single person that comes before me is going through. When they're desperate, whether they're the victim or they're desperate as the defendant or they're desperate as a cancer patient or anybody that quite frequently comes before the court. It's important for your judge to understand what you're going through. If given the honor, I'm going to employ that every single day. I'm going to make sure I improve not just my courtroom, the people's courtroom, but our entire justice system. And I'll put my contact information, my phone number, and my email address. And I hope that we can all see each other soon. And in the meantime, stay safe and continue to be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence Dask. Maura Battersby Murphy, could you please give us your closing statement? You're muted, Maura.
There we go. Sorry about that. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, for carving out the time to be here. I told you about my background and about kind of where I come from with being the children of a small business owner, with being a mother of 3, with being a lifelong resident of Oakland County. And that wasn't just to help you get to know me, although it was. The reason it's important for you to know all these things about me, my training, my experience, and where I come from is because those are the kinds of things that will inform who I am as a judge. And I wanted you to know those things because I wanted you to understand that when you are standing before me, I will understand where you're coming from. And not only have I represented people as in various times in their life, including when they've been accused of significant crimes, I've represented people who have been accused of civil things that would cause them to perhaps lose their livelihoods, which is can be quite scary. And for other businesses and other things that are important to people, which ultimately I think has come to the forefront with what's going on with COVID right now. So when you come before me, I have litigated the type of case that you will be before me on. And I understand on a human level what you are going through, and I take that very seriously. So it's my training and experience that makes me qualified to be a judge. But it is my life experience and my understanding that makes me the judge that you want to be before. And so I would ask for the honor of being your next Oakland County Circuit Court judge. And I appreciate you guys spending the time to potentially bestow that honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura Battersby Murphy. And Nadine Hatten, could you please give us your closing statement?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to present and address the group tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. As I've indicated, I am uniquely qualified to be Oakland County's next circuit court judge. My background as a teacher, high school teacher in public school for 15 years. I come from a UAW family. I was a union steward while working as a teacher. I have been a defense attorney for 10 years, handling adult and juvenile criminal cases, guardianship and conservatorship cases in probate court, as well as handling neglect cases where I represent the parents. So that could be the mother, the father, or the child. Usually I represent the child. I also have a master's degree in criminal defense. So all of those things make me uniquely qualified because it allows me to bring a different perspective to the bench. As I stated, I'm the candidate who has a career outside of law, so I'm able to look at things, issues differently, but still accurately apply the law. I have the positions that I've explained to you: teacher, magistrate, defense attorney, running my own practice, demonstrate leadership skills, and a judge does have to have leadership skills. You have to be able to run the courtroom, move the docket along, and also manage your staff, but to also be able to communicate with the defendants, whether it's verbal and nonverbal. And the nonverbal communication is important, and that's something that I picked up as a teacher and that I have been able to use in my career as a defense attorney and as a magistrate sitting on the bench. Having gone to law school at night and going back to school, getting a master's degree, an LLM in criminal defense, shows my fierce commitment and high standards and determination to become a lawyer. When I say it took me 5 years to obtain my law degree, attending law school at night part-time while I taught high school during the day, and then going back to school later to get a master's degree in criminal defense. All that demonstrates not only my hard work, my tenacity, my determination, but it shows that I have a high level or high standards. I do believe that, again, having been a teacher, UAW member, family, and a union member, and working as a magistrate and a defense attorney and having an LLM, all has helped me to realize that the law is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And like as a teacher, where I often had to make tough decisions regarding my students, as a defense attorney, I've had to sit down and have difficult and tough conversations. As a magistrate, I've had to make tough decisions, whether to impose jail time on some of the cases that I'm allowed to accept pleas on. And as I've already explained to you earlier in the platform, whether to set a personal bond or a cash bond, those are all things that I currently have the opportunity to do and the experience. So all of that makes me uniquely qualified to serve as Oakland County's next circuit court judge. And then if you look at the awards that I've received have to do with public service. They're not awards that boost my my reputation, or they're not awards that award me because of they're recognizing me as being an outstanding person to what I've done in my capacity as a lawyer, but they're awarding me for my work that I've done to help the community, to help someone at a time when they're in need. The Teacher of the Year Award, the Sandra Silva Award, when I am helping families at some of the most difficult times. So again, I am uniquely qualified based on my personal experience, my life experience, my professional experience. All of that equals firm but fair, and that's Nadine Hatten. I'm firm but fair, and I'm capable of making the tough decisions. I'm currently making the decisions. I'm currently serving in the position as a magistrate, and I am prepared and ready to serve as the next Oakland County Circuit Court Judge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nadine Hatten. And then again, all the candidates, if you haven't done it already, please leave your contact information in the chat. And then we're going to send out an email to the club with a link to the recording of this event so people can view it for themselves. And if they have any follow-up questions, they'll just contact you directly. But I have to say I'm disappointed because I was hoping when I watched this event, I would be able to decide who I support. And instead, I'm hopelessly conflicted. We've got 4 excellent candidates. The only thing I can say for certain is that we're going to have a really great Oakland County Circuit Court judge. But as far as who's that going to be, that's a hard question to answer. All 4 of you are just excellent. Thanks a lot for participating. And again, if you're a club member, expect an email. We'll send you a link to the meeting recording and a link with the candidate's contact information. And thank you very much. We're going to adjourn right now. And thank you, everybody who participated.